Lambda Invocation. You can invoke Lambda functions directly with the Lambda console, the Lambda API, the AWS SDK, the AWS CLI, and AWS toolkits. You can also configure other AWS services to invoke your function. For example, you can configure Amazon S3 to invoke your function when an object is created. Each service varies in the method it uses to invoke your function, the structure of the event, and how you configure it. In addition, AWS Lambda can be configured to read events from a queue or a stream, such as Amazon Simple Queue Service, Amazon DynamoDB, and Amazon Kinesis. This is poll-based invocation. AWS Lambda polls these services, reads data, creates an event, and invokes your function. To process items from a stream or queue, you can create an event source mapping. An event source mapping is a resource in Lambda that reads the items and sends them to your function in batches. When you invoke a Lambda function, you can choose to invoke it synchronously or asynchronously. Here is the comparison between them. Synchronous invocation. This is a request and wait for a response model. When you invoke a function synchronously, Lambda runs the function and waits for a response. When the function execution ends, Lambda returns the response from the function's code with additional data, such as the version of the function that was executed. Here are some examples of the services that invoke Lambda functions synchronously. This includes services such as Amazon API Gateway, Amazon Alexa, and others as shown here. On the other hand, asynchronous invocation is an event and queue model, and there is no waiting of a response. When you invoke a function asynchronously, Lambda sends the event to a queue. When the event is added to the queue, Lambda returns a success response immediately with no additional data information. Note that it is possible for the function to receive the same event from Lambda multiple times because the queue itself is eventually consistent. If the function doesn't have enough concurrency available to process all events, additional ones are throttled. Therefore, ensure that your function code gracefully handles duplicate events and that you have enough concurrency available to handle all invocations. Here are some examples of the services that invoke Lambda functions asynchronously. This includes services such as Amazon Simple Storage Service, S3, Amazon Simple Notification Service, SNS, and others as shown here. To invoke a function synchronously with the AWS CLI, use the invoke command. The payload is a string that contains an event in JSON format. Response.json is the response file from the function. If the function returns an object or error, the response is the object or error in JSON format. The response information includes function version that was executed and the status code returned by Lambda. If Lambda was able to run the function, the status code is 200, even if the function returned an error. If the function exits without error, the response is null. If Lambda isn't able to run the function, the error is displayed in the output. To get logs for an invocation from the command line, use the log type option. You can use the base64 utility to decode the logs. To invoke a function asynchronously, set the invocation type parameter to event. The output file, response.json, doesn't contain any information, but is still created when you run this command. If Lambda is not able to add the event to the queue, the error message appears in the command output.